The Midnight Visitor. In a small, secluded town, there was a house at the end of an old cobblestone road that no one dared to visit after dark. The locals whispered of strange occurrences and mysterious disappearances that happened around the house. Some said it was haunted by the ghost of a man who once lived there, while others believed something far more sinister resided within its walls. One evening, Emily, a young woman new to the town, was walking home late after a long shift at the local diner. The night was cold, and a thick fog rolled in, making it hard to see more than a few feet ahead. As she walked down the road, she felt a sudden chill and realized she had wandered onto the old cobblestone road right in front of the infamous house. A shiver ran down her spine, but she brushed it off and quickened her pace. However, as she passed the house, she heard a faint, almost inaudible knocking sound. It was coming from the house's front door. Curiosity got the better of her, and she hesitantly turned towards the sound. The house was dark, its windows covered in grime, but the door was slightly ajar. The knocking continued, steady and slow, as if someone was gently tapping on the wood. Emily knew she should walk away, but something compelled her to move closer. As she approached the door, she noticed a piece of paper pinned to it with a rusty nail. It was a note written in shaky handwriting. "Do not answer the door after midnight." A sudden sense of dread washed over her. The knocking grew louder, more insistent. She looked at her watch, 11:59 p.m. Her heart raced. She knew she should leave, but she couldn't move. It was as if her feet were glued to the ground. The clock struck midnight. The knocking stopped. Silence enveloped the air, thick and suffocating. Then, slowly, the door creaked open, revealing nothing but darkness beyond. Emily's breath caught in her throat. She stepped back, ready to flee, when she saw something move inside the house. A shadow, tall and thin, creeping towards the doorway. She turned to run, but the door slammed shut with a force that shook the ground. The note on the door fluttered to the ground, and a gust of icy wind blew past her, nearly knocking her off her feet. Terrified, she ran all the way home, not daring to look back. When she finally reached her house, she locked the door behind her and collapsed on the floor, trembling with fear. For the next few nights, Emily couldn't sleep. Every time she closed her eyes, she heard the faint knocking sound echoing in her mind. She tried to convince herself it was just her imagination, but the fear wouldn't go away. Then, on the fourth night, she was jolted awake by a loud banging on her front door. It was the same slow, steady knocking she had heard at the old house. Her heart pounded in her chest as she realized the knocking was no longer in her mind. It was real, and it was coming from her door. She crept towards the door, her hands shaking. The knocking continued, growing louder and more aggressive. She looked through the peephole but saw nothing. Gathering all her courage, she opened the door, expecting the worst. But there was nothing there, just the cold, empty night. She sighed in relief, but as she turned to close the door, she noticed a piece of paper on the ground. It was the same note she had seen on the old house's door. "Do not answer the door after midnight." Panicked, she slammed the door shut and backed away. The knocking resumed, louder and more frantic this time. The windows rattled, and the lights flickered. Emily ran to her bedroom, locked the door, and hid under the covers, praying for the noise to stop. Then everything went silent. She lay there holding her breath, listening to the deafening quiet. Minutes passed and nothing happened. Just as she started to relax, she heard a whisper, soft yet clear, as if someone was standing right next to her ear. "Let me in." Frozen in terror, Emily didn't move. The whisper came again, this time more insistent. "Let me in." She closed her eyes, wishing it all away. The whisper grew louder, angrier, until it was a full-blown scream. "Let me in!" Suddenly, the door to her bedroom flew open, slamming against the wall with a thunderous crash. She opened her eyes and saw a shadowy figure standing in the doorway, its eyes glowing a faint, eerie red. Before she could scream, the figure lunged at her, and everything went black. The next morning, the townspeople found Emily's house empty, with no sign of her anywhere. The only thing left behind was the note pinned to the front door. "Do not answer the door after midnight."